This is Gemara Baba Basra, Daf Samach Gimel, and we're holding on the very bottom of Samach Beis, Amid Beis, about 12 lines from the bottom. At the two dots, teaches Rab. The Gemara begins by bringing a machlokes, Abaya and Rava. It's going to continue how we interpret different lashonos, different ways that things are verbalized or written in Ishtar Mechira. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabba, Palga de Isli Ba'ara. If someone writes that he's selling half of that which I own in the land, Palga, then the buyer has acquired half. Palga Ba'ara de Isli, but a slightly nuanced lashon. But if he says half in the land that I own, riva, then it's half of that land, which means he only gets a quarter. That's Rabba's statement. Amalei Abaye says, Maishnahachi. Abaye says, I don't understand the difference. Half that I own, half in the land that I own. Says Abaye, what's the chilik? Ishtik, Rava was quiet. So Amar Abaye, says Abaye, Ana Savri. Says Abaye, Ana Savri Midishik Kabule Kabule Kabla. I thought the fact that Rabba was quiet meant what? Meant that Rabba was Mekabel. Says the Gemara, it's not true. Chazina. Hanu Shtari Dinafki Bar. You know why? Because I saw that there were certain shtaros that came out of the Bezdin of Mar, of Rabbah. Ksivu Achi. And the following was written in it. Palga de Isali Ba'ara. Half that I own in the land. Palga. And what does it say? Palga Disli Bara. Palga, it says he gets half. Palga Bara Disli Riva. So says Abaye, I asked, my shlachi. I thought Rabba was Mekabel. Says Abaye, clearly not. Because I see a star that's coming out of the Bezdin of Rabba. And Lamaisa, it's sticking to his guns. So Abaye doesn't yet know why that is true. But that is the machlokes number one of Abaye and Rava. Vamer Rabba, number 2, 4 lines to the bottom. Motzer Ara Demina Balga. There's an area between a field, and he writes that the Motzar, the boundary, Ara Demina, is the land from which it is divided Palga. What's the halacha? Palga, he gets half. Motzar Ara Demina Psika. But if the seller writes the boundary is the part that is being cut off, then he only gets tes kabin. And again, Abaye is bothered by the nuance of differences in these l'shonos. Amrei Abaye says Abaye maishtahachi. And Nachamol ishtik. Rabba was quiet. Savamine aidi balga. So Rabba was quiet. So Abaye thought that savar mina idividi balga. That in both cases you should get half. But says the Gemara as we turn over to today's daf, Samach Gimel and Aleph, that is not true at all. The loyi, and that is inaccurate. Says the Gemara, Rav Yimur bar Shalmaya, Ledidim Afarshili Mineda Abaya, was explained to me in the name of Abaya, Bein Motzar Ara, Demina Balga, Bein Motzar Ara, Demina Psika, both of them you get half, says the Gemara. Why? It's dependent on one detail. What's the detail? It's dependent upon Amar Le, if he says Ilan Misarina, if he says Palga, if he says these are the boundaries, then he gets half. Lo Amar Le Ilan Misarina Tisha Kabin. So explains the Gemara, that is the chilik between the two cases. We continue 6 lines down at the 2 dots. Another term that differentiates in how a sale is sold. Pshita, says the Gemara, the following is obvious. Amar, if someone says, Yachaloik ploini benachasai. Someone says, Le ploini yachaloik, split up, or share as we'll see in my possessions, palga. Halacha is that he gets half. To chelik le ploini benachasai. But if he says, give a chelik to Pliny, mai, what's the halacha then? So the Gemara suggests is that if he says, let's split it, he has a portion, that means he gets half. But what happens if he says to give him something? That's the shaila of the Gemara. So Amar Ravina comes like Ravina to be paishet the shaila Amar Ravina Bar Kisi. Says Ravina Bar Kisi Tashema. Deitani, we learned in a brayso. Someone says, give a portion to a certain guy in my pit. What does he get? In Pachas Me'Ravia L'Chavis. Says the person who's acquiring the pit gets no less than a revius of the water. But if he says L'Chavis, if he says give him a barrel's worth, in Barucha is Mishrinis. Again, so if he just says Stam Bar, he gets a quarter. If he says a Chavis, a barrel's worth, he gets an eighth. If he says Likadera, Ein Bachas Mi Yud Beis, he doesn't get less than a 12th. If he says L'Tafiach for a cup, Ein Bachas Mishisha Aser. So those are the denominations and figuring out how the verbalization of each term equals that which he meant to affect in the transaction. Continues the Gemara, smack in middle of Samach Gimel and Beis. The first one in line is Concise, opening up a new sugya. Tanu Rabbanan Ben Levi Shamachar Sodali Israel. We have a Ben Levi who sells a field to a Yid V'Amar Loi. I'm selling it to you. Amanas Shemaiser Rishon Sheli. He says, I'm stipulating that you only buying this if you give me the Maiser Rishon. Halacha is Maiser Rishon Sheli. V'Mamar. But if he says Liu Labanai, I'm selling it that I get the Maiser Rishon and my children after I die. Mace, if he dies, he's still Labanai. His children get it. V'Mamar Loi. And if he says calls a man Shasada Zu biyadcha, as long as his field's in your possession, machra. As long as his field's in your possession, machra v'chazer v'lacha. Let's say he sells it and buys it back. Ein lo yalav klum. Then he gets nothing at all. So says the Gemara, I don't understand what's going on in this brayso. We'll see in a few moments how this relates back to our Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Amai. What's the reason if he says that the Meiser Rishon goes to the Kayin, to the Ben Levi, that it does? Ain't on the Magna Davar Shlai B'Laylam. Not able to be Magna something that's not in this world yet. Answers the Gemara, the classical teretz. Kima Damar Le'am Menashe Meiser Rishon Sheli, Shivishari L'Makayim Meiser. Says the Gemara, there's a fascinating mechanics at play over here. That since the Ben Levi says, I'm retaining the rights. So the way that it works is that it's not that he sells it and he's obligated to give him the mice. No, this chelek, this portion was never sold to him. Says the Gemara, Omar Reish Lakish, commenting on the previous din about how to give away the Meiser Rishon and get back to the Levi. Says Reish Lakish, Loisei Meres. You know we learn from over here. Someone sells a house to his friend and he says, I want the top rooftop, top part of the fence is mine. Do you tell Yana Shalai? He keeps it. It says the Gemara as we turn over to Samach Gimel and Beis. I don't understand if the whole mechanics that allow the Ben Levi to keep it. It's because we view it as if there's a shayar, as if it's left over in the sale. Ask the Gemara to turn over to Samach Gimel and Beis. L'mayachasa. According to what halacha do we say that he can keep the part of the fence? So said, Amar, you know why? Shem writes a loitzi by zizin moitzi. That if he wants to make beams off of the roof, he's allowed to. And Rapapa Amar, Shem writes a loitzi al gaba boina, he keeps the airspace. So says the Gemara, Bish, Shalom the Rav Zvid, Haitanus Sameres. Rababa, Maizai Sameres. According to Rababa, there's over on stand building on top of it. What does that have to do with the previous? So you says the Gemara, indeed, Kasha, that is a good question. We continue, Samach Gimel and Beis. We are 6 lines down. Says the Gemara. Omar Rav Dimim and Ardain. We'll see how this is immediately going to open up a new sugya. Haiman de Mizale Beit Chavri. Obviously connected to the previous sugya. Says Rav Dimim and Ardai. If someone sells a house to his friend, even though he writes the exact precise height and the depth of the house, the entirety of the house is only sold if he writes, I'm selling you all the way from the Tahom Ara, the depth of the land, all the way to the height of the sky. Why? My timer. Because when someone writes without this line, if he didn't add in from the depths all the way to the Shamayim, Mistama loy kani, the stam is there's no kinyan. Haniyom karoma leminkom kavaroma, v'hani mitoim harav adrom rakia, v'bar v'dos u'machilos. It says the Gemara, there's 2 levels of kinyan that are effective. Number 1, it's going to be to actualize the kinyan on the house. Number 2 is going to be, says the Gemara, to actualize the kinyan on all the other areas that are sold with the house. The bar, the dosa machilais, says the Gemara, the pits, the cistern, and other dug out areas. Says the Gemara, 10 lines at the bottom. The first one in line, I'll bring you a raya. Says the Mishnah that if someone sells a house, all that is sold is the house. So he's going to tell me Bistama Kani Kavaroma, Lani Kavaroma, Limikni Barvet Dosu Bachilais. To like Kasavle. Says I don't understand. If you're going to tell me something, you are kind of Karuma. So the fact that you wrote Karuma, that is itself an addition. That you wrote the depth and the height, therefore you should even be kind of the bar and the dos. Says the Gemara, Delay Kasavle, we're talking about a case where he didn't write the depth and the height. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Vaval Bisha Kasavle, Tani says you did. Hachi Kamer answers the Gemara 5 lines to the bottom. Afal Bishaloi Kasiv line. Of course, it's always difficult when you switch a Mishnah, you switch a Bryce that says not right to yeah right. Says the Gemara Bishaloi Kasiv line. Kemisha Kasiv. It's as if you wrote Lemikne Umka Veruma. Lemikne Bar Vedos. Umachilais. Then he Kaslam Kaveruma Kani. Of Laikan, says the Gemara, Klapi, the Keveroma in a Chanami. You'll have a kinyan. The Chiddush here is that you're not going to have a kinyan on the bar and on the tos. So one more raya, says the Gemara, 2 lines at the bottom, Tashima. He says if you sell a house and you didn't specify all the items, you don't get the roof. When there's a fence, when the fence is 10 tvachim tall, as we turn over to Samach Dalit Amid Aleph. It says the Gemara, I don't understand. Based on the aforementioned discussion, and if you're gonna tell me, Bistama Kani, Bistama, you are Kanam Karuma, so Kigvais Tvachim I have. Who cares that the fence is 10 Tvachim tall? Since the Gemara, no, Kim the Gvais Tvachim Chashiv, and that's why it's only gonna be sold if it's written in explicitly. Stop over here, I'll pick it up from here, Bisiyata Dishmaya.